Elias Ward had spent years in silence. His ranch, perched on the edge of the frontier, stretched far and wide, its rolling fields meeting the horizon in gentle waves of gold and green. The wind whispered through the tall grasses, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers, and the soft hum of insects filled the warm summer air. Elias often sat on the porch of his modest house, a mug of steaming coffee in hand, watching the sun rise and fall with a sense of quiet contentment. Life had slowed for him, and he liked it that way. No crowds, no noise, no demands. Just him, the land, and the animals that roamed freely. Yet, beneath the calm surface of his daily routine, a subtle emptiness lingered. Years ago, he had said goodbye to the world of soldiers and orders, to comrades who now existed only in memories, to family that had moved on or passed away. The silence that once comforted him sometimes felt heavier, like a shadow stretching across the land he had worked so hard to tame. He never admitted it to anyone, not even himself. But sometimes he wondered if he had chosen solitude because it was safe, or because he was afraid of losing people again. One evening, as the sky turned shades of orange and pink, Elias noticed something unusual. A faint glow hovered in the distance, moving slowly across the fields. At first he thought it was a trick of the setting sun, a reflection on the low clouds. But as the glow grew brighter and closer, he realized it wasn't natural. Curiosity stirred in him, along with a flicker of unease. He set down his mug and walked toward the barn, the wooden boards creaking beneath his boots. The glow pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat, and then, suddenly, one of the lights descended rapidly, crashing into a nearby field with a loud thud that shook the ground. Elias froze, his heart thumping. He had seen strange things in his lifetime, from alien reconnaissance missions to rogue spacecraft, but nothing had prepared him for this. Taking a deep breath, he grabbed his flashlight and approached the crash site cautiously. The field was quiet except for the rustling of grass under his feet and the occasional low groan of a distant animal. As he neared the light, he saw them, 11 figures huddled together, small and fragile in the glow of the pod's broken lights. They looked exhausted, their postures weak, as though they had been traveling for days without rest. At first, Elias could barely comprehend what he was seeing. They were humanoid in shape, but their skin shimmered with soft, iridescent hues that shifted with the fading light. Their eyes were larger than human eyes, reflective and deep, conveying fear, pain, and a kind of quiet hope all at once. Their clothing was thin and torn, revealing marks that suggested recent battles or harsh conditions. Elias's trained mind raced. Who were they? Were they hostile? Should he call for backup? And then he realized they weren't attacking him. They weren't holding weapons. They were terrified. One of them, slightly taller than the others, stepped forward. Her voice, when she spoke, was melodic but strained. "Please, we need shelter," she said, her words careful, respectful. Elias noticed the others looking to her, silent but tense, their bodies leaning toward her as though seeking comfort. "Our ship was attacked. We were forced to leave. We have nowhere else to go. We will not trouble you." Elias's mind flickered between caution and compassion. He had been trained to assess threats, to prioritize survival, to react with calculated precision. Yet something about their presence, the vulnerability, the desperation in their eyes, stirred something different. He lowered his flashlight slightly. How many of you?" he asked quietly. 11, the woman replied. "All widows, all survivors. Please, we only ask for shelter, rest, safety for a time." Elias's first instinct was to refuse. 11 strangers, potentially alien, could be dangerous, unpredictable. He could hardly imagine taking care of them all, feeding them, keeping them safe, especially on a remote ranch where help would take hours to arrive. But as he looked into their faces, he felt a tug in his chest, a reminder of years spent fighting, years spent protecting, years spent ensuring that those who could not protect themselves survived. "All right," he said finally, his voice firm but not unkind. "Follow me. Carefully." They moved slowly, almost cautiously, following him back to the ranch. Elias watched them the whole time, noting how each of them moved differently, some limping slightly, some carrying injuries that were not immediately visible. They obeyed his instructions without hesitation, a quiet discipline present in every gesture. Back at the barn, he opened the doors wide, and the wide space inside smelled of hay and wood. "You can rest here for now," he said, gesturing toward the corners where they could settle. The taller woman, who had introduced herself as Reva, nodded deeply. "Thank you," she said simply. "You have no idea what this means to us." Elias offered blankets and food from his limited stores, and they accepted them quietly, each moving to a spot to make themselves comfortable. As they ate, he noticed the small details, the way they shared food without complaint, the way their eyes scanned the environment cautiously but never hostilely, and the subtle gestures of gratitude that spoke louder than words. Elias felt an unfamiliar warmth spreading through him. For the first time in many years, his home felt alive. Night fell over the ranch, but instead of the usual silence, there were soft whispers, the sound of gentle movement, and the occasional cough or groan from someone nursing an injury. Elias sat on the porch again, mug in hand. Staring at the stars that now seemed brighter than usual, he thought about the solitude he had cherished and realized that it had been a life half-lived, missing the connection that, however strange, now filled his ranch. Sleep came fitfully that night, Elias's mind racing with questions. Who were these women exactly? Could he trust them completely? Were the raiders still out there, searching for them, and would they return? Despite his concerns, there was no denying the truth. He had made a choice, and the first step had already been taken. For the first time in a long while, Elias felt a sense of purpose, a renewed instinct to protect, not a mission assigned by command, but one chosen by his own heart. The next morning, he rose early, the golden sun spilling over the horizon. The widows were already awake, moving quietly around the barn, tending to small chores and organizing their sparse belongings. Their diligence impressed him. It reminded him of the soldiers he had once trained and led. Reva approached him with a gentle smile. "We can help around here," she said. "We can do chores, mend, cook. We do not wish to be a burden." Elias felt a smile tug at the corners of his mouth. "I won't let you be a burden," he replied. "But we'll take it slowly. You need rest first." Days passed, and the widows slowly began to regain their strength. They helped repair fences, tended the animals, and shared knowledge of their alien technology, improving the efficiency of some old ranch machinery. Elias marveled at how quickly they adapted to his world, and in turn how much he learned about theirs. They spoke of their home colony, of the war that had taken their mates, and of the long journey that led them to his doorstep. Each story was filled with sorrow, yet also resilience, hope, and the desire to live again despite the losses they had endured. One evening, as Elias watched the widows preparing dinner in the barn, he noticed the quiet way they coordinated, each aware of the other's movements, each anticipating needs without being told. It reminded him of a military unit he had once commanded, only now there was no fighting, only cooperation and care. Reva caught his gaze and smiled faintly. "You are patient with us," she said. "Not many humans would have done what you did." Elias shrugged, though he felt a warmth in his chest. "I've seen enough suffering in my time to know when someone needs help," he replied. "And sometimes you just do what's right." That night, as he lay in bed, he realized that the ranch had changed more than he had anticipated. The silence he had cherished was gone, replaced by gentle noises of life, whispers, laughter, and the rhythm of shared existence. For the first time in years, he did not feel the weight of loneliness pressing down on him. Instead, he felt a tentative connection to these 11 alien widows, and a growing determination to keep them safe, no matter the cost. Unbeknownst to Elias, danger was not far away. Scouting drones and raiders were still searching for the widows, tracking the escape pod through distant sensors. But in the warmth of his small home and under the glow of his porch light, Elias felt ready. He had lived alone for too long. Now, with these 11 strangers in his care, he had a reason to fight again, not for duty, not for honor, but for life itself, for safety, and for the fragile, precious bonds forming under the open sky of his lonely ranch. Days passed quietly on Elias Ward's ranch. The 11 alien widows had begun to settle into a new rhythm of life, each finding a small corner of the barn or the house to call their own. They moved with careful grace, cleaning, cooking, and helping Elias with the ranch work. The animals seemed to sense the calm that had returned, and even the usually skittish horses accepted the presence of the new visitors. Elias watched them with a sense of cautious pride. Reva, their leader, coordinated their tasks with quiet authority, and the other widows followed without question. There was an unspoken understanding between them and Elias. They trusted him, and he trusted them. It was a fragile peace, but it felt real, and it filled the ranch with life that had long been missing. One evening, as Elias checked the fences, he noticed a strange movement on the horizon, a faint shimmer in the air, almost like heat waves, but irregular and deliberate. He squinted through the telescope and felt a familiar tension settle in his chest. Raiders. They had been searching for the widows, and it seemed they had finally narrowed down the location. Elias returned to the house quickly, closing the door behind him, and found the widows preparing their evening meal. He spoke calmly but with urgency. "We might have company soon. Raiders are nearby. I need you all to be ready." Reva's eyes widened, but she nodded. "What should we do?" she asked softly. "Follow my instructions exactly," Elias said. "Stay together. Stay hidden if needed. We'll protect this place." That night, the first signs of danger appeared. Distant hums grew louder, and the air vibrated with the sound of hovering craft. Elias moved quickly, guiding the widows to a secure underground storage area he had used for supplies. The space was cramped but safe, and he ensured everyone was settled before heading outside to face the approaching threat. The raiders' ships hovered low, scanning the area. Elias used the tools and materials at hand to prepare traps, flares, and sound alarms. Every step had to be calculated. He remembered his training, the years of experience that had kept him alive in impossible situations. And now he used it to protect not just himself, but 11 vulnerable lives who had become unexpectedly important to him. When the raiders finally landed, Elias triggered his first trap. Bright flares shot into the sky, accompanied by loud mechanical clanging that echoed across the fields. The raiders hesitated, their sensors detecting what they thought was a larger force. Elias moved silently through the shadows, activating more alarms and releasing smoke bombs. Every step was precise, every action deliberate. The widows watched from below, holding their breath, hearts pounding as they listened to the chaos above. It was over within an hour. The raiders, convinced that they faced a well-defended ranch, retreated. Elias allowed himself a brief moment to exhale, then returned to the underground shelter to check on the widows. They emerged cautiously, relief and awe on their faces. Reva approached him, her expression soft but intense. "You saved us," she said simply. "I don't know how to repay you." Elias shook his head. You don't need to repay me. I did what had to be done. You were in danger, and it's my job to protect those who can't protect themselves." In the following days, the widows began to integrate more fully into life on the ranch. They worked alongside Elias, mending fences, repairing equipment, and tending animals. They taught him small things about their technology, which made certain tasks easier and more efficient. He marveled at their ingenuity, their calm approach to problems, and their resilience. They were survivors, yes, but also thinkers, creators, and healers. Elias also noticed the changes within himself. The quiet life he had once cherished now felt empty without the energy, laughter, and voices of the widows. He found himself smiling more, speaking more, even laughing at small jokes. For the first time in years, he felt a connection that he had thought was lost forever. It was not romantic, not in the way humans often understood love, but it was real. It was trust, friendship, and mutual respect woven into every shared meal, every cooperative task, and every quiet moment under the stars. One evening, after a long day of work, Elias and Reva sat together on the porch. The other widows were inside, cooking and preparing for the night. Reva looked out at the fields, her eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. "Your world, it is very different from ours," she said. "But it is peaceful, and it feels safe here." Elias nodded. "I've lived alone for a long time. I didn't think anyone would come along to change that. But maybe this was meant to happen." Reva smiled faintly. "Perhaps it was. You gave us hope when we had none, and you gave us shelter when nowhere else would accept us. That is a rare thing, even among your kind." The days turned into weeks, and the widows continued to thrive. They built small personal spaces within the barn and house, adding touches of their culture, woven tapestries that glowed softly at night, small gardens that produced alien plants adapted to the local soil, and systems that purified water and improved food production. The ranch became a fusion of worlds, human and alien, old and new. Elias watched the transformation with quiet pride. He had always thought of himself as a retired soldier, a man who had done his duty and now lived in peace. But he realized that peace was not just the absence of conflict. Peace was life, connection, and community. The widows had brought that to him in ways he had never imagined. One afternoon, a small mechanical drone appeared on the outskirts of the property. Elias tensed, ready for another raid, but the drone simply hovered, scanning the area, and then departed. It was a reminder that danger still existed, but it no longer held the same power over him. He had prepared, he had protected, and he had earned the trust of 11 incredible beings. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the fields, the widows gathered around Elias for the evening meal. Laughter filled the barn, a sound Elias had not heard in years. Stories were shared, small jokes passed around, and the simple joy of companionship warmed the space more than any fire could. Reva caught his eye and nodded. "We will stay," she said. "Not just because we need a home, but because this place, with you, it feels like life again." Elias felt a deep satisfaction settle over him. His ranch, once quiet and empty, had become a sanctuary, not just for the widows, but for himself. He had fought battles, survived wars, and lived through loss, but nothing had mattered as much as the life he now shared with these 11 extraordinary beings. Under the open sky, with the stars beginning to twinkle above, Elias realized that he had found something he thought was impossible, a sense of purpose and belonging that went beyond solitude. The widows were not just guests, they were a part of his life, his family of choice, and together, they would continue to face whatever challenges came their way, united by trust, respect, and the quiet courage of a retired human who had opened his heart to 11 alien widows. The ranch would never be the same again, and Elias did not want it to be. The silence of his past had been replaced with life, laughter, and hope. He looked out at the fields, breathing deeply, and for the first time in years, he felt completely at peace. He had lived alone for so long, but now he knew he would never be alone again. And as the night settled over the ranch, the soft glow from the alien gardens and the gentle hum of the widow's activities filled the air. Elias realized that this community, this connection, was more precious than anything he had fought for in his entire life. He had opened his doors to strangers, and in doing so, he had opened his heart. The 11 widows smiled at him from the dim light of the barn, and he returned their smiles knowing that together they had created something rare and beautiful. A place of safety, a place of hope, a home. And in that moment, Elias Ward understood fully that life, even for a retired human who thought he had seen it all, could still surprise, inspire, and heal.